Hello, everybody, and welcome to yet another episode of The Birds and the Lees, where we talk about being a family in ministry and what life is like. And my name is Nathan, and I am joined by my wife, Kim. And it's a Friday evening, and we are, if you have seen the previous episode, we're talking about ourselves.
Yeah.
And
That sounds so ridiculous.
it sounds ridiculous and it sounds very vain. But what we felt was maybe the best launching point, because we've been doing a couple episodes prior to this. We thought maybe the best launching point was for us to share a little bit more about ourselves, so then guys can sit there and go, okay, that's who these people are, instead of, because we're not famous. We're not.
Nope. We are
not famous at all.
average.
We're not in some gigantic, 10,000 person church.
Right.
I'm a family pastor at a church that I love, and it's in Texas. We live in the DFW area. But again, we're not somebody you're going to have heard of before, and hopefully, maybe by the time you're done, you'll feel that maybe you know us a little bit better, and you're comfortable, and maybe we're nice people. I don't know. So, having said that, Kim, we said that I would be telling my portion of my story, and we're doing this like we said in the previous episode, chapters like episodic, and so we're really only going to go through childhood,
right?
Maybe up through high school,
right?
Going
so
into
last
college.
time
we went through you going through undergrad. So
last time I talked about kind of my childhood growing up, and so now it's your turn to talk a little bit about where you came from and your parents a little bit, and kind of how being in ministry plays into all that. So in your situation, maybe you may have to go even back as far as your parents. And
I don't know if I need to go back that far.
Okay.
Maybe down the road we can talk just a little bit.
Yeah.
So well, then I guess we will start at the beginning. So I was born in Memphis, Tennessee. I've actually moved quite a bit, whereas you are a native Dallasite.
Yeah.
I'm not. I'm a transplant from other places. So I was born in Memphis, Tennessee. My mom was a nurse, or is a nurse. Well, she's not currently one, but she is a nurse by trade. My dad went to Bible college. He'd been in the Navy. He went to Bible college. He grew up a Navy kid. Mm-hmm. My grandfather was a career Navyman, career sailor. And so they met while my dad was stationed in Memphis, believe it or not. He was in the Naval Air, whatever. I don't fully understand it, but my mom was at nursing school. And so they met and they were married. And, of course, obviously, I came along, and then I have a brother, which is unique between the two of us because you're an only child. And I have one brother, not a big family, but I have one brother. And so having said that, my dad was a pastor for a while. I think that's early on. And the timeline's a little bit hazy for me. He was a pastor, and then he stepped down out of ministry. But I was always kind of surrounded by church. He actually ended up going to work for Frito-Lay for 25 years and worked his way up to an executive position at Frito-Lay.
I think more important than being surrounded by church is you were surrounded by the thought that in-depth knowledge of how you perceived the Bible and studied it was very important.
Well, yeah. I mean, I come from a long line of not only are you going to church, but you're actually studying the Bible. You're actually studying God's Word. And so having a proper viewpoint, proper theology was very important. Having a proper understanding of salvation and what discipleship is, that was very important, though not always something that I understood, obviously, until I was much older. And even now, still learning. We're always learning. I don't say that I have a complete grasp or I'm the be-all, end-all of knowledge on theology, but it was important. I think beyond just, we didn't go to church in the sense of, and for a while there, I feel like we weren't as involved. There was a point that I do remember that my parents got us really, really plugged in. I went to a private school. I went to a private Baptist elementary school in Charlotte, North Carolina.
Okay, but you were born in
Memphis, Tennessee.
Then you moved to Charlotte.
We moved to Salisbury, North Carolina.
Okay.
And then we moved to Charlotte when I started kindergarten.
Okay.
So Dad was being transferred for Frito-Lay. So we started kindergarten. I started at like I said, a private Baptist elementary school, which was incredibly strict. It wasn't kind of like the Catholic school nuns rapping on your knuckles kind of thing, but it was T-shirts with no prints on them. Our boys always had a belt. We had the haircut. In fact, the haircut that we had, if you went to a certain barbershop and just said, "Give me the north side," they knew exactly what haircut you had to have, and they'd cut it that way because that's where everybody went to get their haircut. So we were in Charlotte until late 84. I was getting ready to go into fifth grade. Or no, I was in fifth grade. No. Yeah, I was going into fifth grade and getting ready to move up to middle school, I believe. Or I was in middle. Anyway, either way, I was getting ready to go into middle school.
Right.
And, up to that point, I was a straight A kid. I always, I never got in trouble. I got spanked once or twice in school because we had corporal punishment at a private school. So we got paddled.
Different day and time.
Yes. I got paddled once for peeing on the playground because they wouldn't let me go to the bathroom. So I found a corner of the playground and decided I just needed to go. And the principal's daughter caught me and I got paddled for that. Ugh. Yeah. I mean, there were a couple things. I got paddled. I mean, you just did that. In fact, I was in Awana, and what we would do, Awana met at the school, which was also our church. And we would all sneak into the classrooms of the grade above us to try to figure out which teachers had the paddles that we didn't want to experience. So that's, we would check them out. So that's when we knew which class we didn't want to be in. But I would say overall, the childhood was fairly normal. My dad was a lot of fun, so he would do things like he bought pop guns for us, these Daisy air rifle pop guns, and he would buy one for him, and we'd have shootouts. We lived on this property that had a lot of space.
So fun.
It was fun. It had lots of woods, and we'd run around in there. One time I wanted a plastic gladiator sword that I saw in a toy store, and he was kind of like, I can make one better than that. So he made us these big wooden swords that could probably legitimately kill someone.
Having a son, that terrifies me.
Yeah, I mean, people got hurt. And but it was fun. I mean, he was involved. We jokingly said, when I was a teenager, you always hear this term, the absentee father.
Right.
Yeah, I had the perfect attendance dad, though I kind of wanted him to go away when I was older. I was like, okay, I'm a teenager, quit bugging me. But, it wasn't a case. My parents, they've been married 50 years next year. Mm-hmm. So, we're coming up on their 50th, which is a big deal. And they've been married this entire time. And, as any marriage, there's up, down, and whatever. Yep. So we always had a model, my brother and I, of, I think, a good model of a dad and husband. Nobody's perfect, and I know that about myself. And, but obviously my parents love each other, and we always saw that. Mm-hmm. Very, very visible, sometimes almost too visible, because the dad was always kissing my mom in front of my friends, which was gross. But we did fun things, like we'd take motorcycle rides. He gave me a motorcycle helmet when I was a kid if I learned to ride my bike. So I learned to ride my bike, got a motorcycle helmet, and then I could ride with him on his motorcycle. And we would do hour-long rides, and it was fun. Yeah. My brother is 3 years younger than me, and he's a little bit different than I am. We're definitely we're definitely two different ends of the spectrum when it comes to just personalities. I'm obviously, if anyone who knows me, I'm a much more, let's just say, passionate person, much more emotional. I have, I have the anger, I have the temper that comes from the family. Whereas,
you know what my favorite difference is?
What's that?
That you cannot handle the sight of blood.
Yeah.
Or anything.
Well, no, I can handle blood. I can't handle broken bones.
Okay.
That nauseates me.
Your brother works.
He's a nurse.
He prefers the ER.
Yeah, he's a nurse, and he likes the gross stuff, and he loves to share the gross stuff with us. He's married, and his wife is a nurse practitioner. I forget the term, but she's
amazing at what she does, and that's
she's very good at what she does. He's very good at what he does, and they love to talk about gross stories. And use terms that I'm just staring there blankly because, I'm an English, I have an English degree and a Christian study or Christian education degree. So there's no sciences involved in any of that.
Right.
We read a lot. But yeah, we're very different. Zach is much more mellow, I would say, very smart, very, very intelligent.
Even keeled.
I jokingly say that I'm of the three guys, I'm definitely the least smartest person in the room because they're both pretty brilliant, my dad and my brother. I just, you grew up in a house where you had to be really sharp because there's a lot of wit. My mom's the same way. There's a lot of joking and a lot of wit going on, and she's very smart and a good thinker. And so you just kind of had to be ready for that. Mm-hmm. And so, I can't think of a time. Dad always used to say, he goes, you don't have to raise a child. You have to raise an adult because we're born children. Right. And we automatically know how to be children. So the role of a parent is to raise an adult. And so I think he challenged us and treated us that way.
Sure.
When we were...
Pop guns.
Well, pop guns. There was the fun, but there were also things like this. We were sitting around one day, my friends and I in high school, we were getting ready to graduate, and maybe we were in college, but we were all, everybody's griping about their curfews they had in high school, about how their parents never let them do this and they were strict or whatever. And I remember my dad being in the room, and I could not think of a curfew that I ever had. Mm-hmm. And I asked him, I said, did I ever have a curfew? And he kind of looked at me, and I went, no, I didn't. And he said, yeah. He goes, no, my expectation was to raise you to know what was decent and the right thing to do and let you make that decision on your own.
Right.
And so, my brother and I, we were never out late. We never snuck out of the house. Well, okay, confession time. We did a couple times. I can't lie. We did sneak out of the house. Sorry, Mom, Dad, if you listen to this, we did sneak out of the house one time, and not Zach, but me and my friends, and I might have hung off an interstate road sign.
Cool story.
Cool story. So if you ever hear this, yeah, we did that.
Yeah.
And
we're all young and stupid at one point.
I'm 46 now, so I feel comfortable that I can share that without getting in trouble.
Probably won't get grounded.
I probably won't get grounded for that. But yes, we did sneak out and hang from an interstate billboard. So just so you're aware of that. Where was I before?
Talking about how a great idea it was not to
share
curfew.
Not to have a curfew.
Yeah.
Only did it once. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
But we didn't get I did get in trouble at one point.
Yes, you did.
I made some poor choices with friends, and between my 8th grade and my freshman year, I did get arrested as part of a gang, for lack of a better word, of suburban middle class kids who got into vandalism and burglary. It makes it sound tougher than it really was. We were just a bunch of, punk kids who were skateboarding and got bored, and somebody broke into a building that we went into, and they ended up ransacking it and trashing it and did thousands of dollars worth of damage. We thought it was abandoned. It wasn't actually. Yep. There's never really an abandoned building. Somebody owns every building.
Right.
Yeah. Somebody
Even
owns.
The government
Yeah.
will take over what is not owned.
And we were terrible criminals because we did it next to a fast food place where everybody saw us do it in broad daylight.
Yeah.
So there were about 13 guys who got arrested.
For the record, you're still just as sneaky as that moment.
Yeah, I'm still a terrible criminal. So, we got arrested. We were truly looking at juvie, a couple months in juvie and community services and fines and everything. And I remember my dad sitting there because, this is one of those moments where, he's kind of seen it coming.
Yeah.
Just by my behavior and not listening to him and making poor choices. And, I had a habit of lying all the time. Mm-hmm. And I remember him saying, when you go in there, they're going to ask me if I can trust you, what you're saying. And he looked at me and he goes, what am I going to tell them? Mm-hmm. Because you lie to me all the time. And that really stuck with me, even though I didn't, it wasn't an overnight fix. I didn't, I had a lot of bad habits, and, obviously we're all sinful. Mm-hmm. And so it's hard to break those things, but it stuck with me because that was the moment where it's like, what, your word matters. It matters the kind of person you are,
right?
Because what you do communicates something to everybody else. And it's hard to change that perception,
right?
Even when you're in the right.
Right.
Even when you're in the right, if you have this habit of being this person over here, people aren't going to believe it. And so that was kind of the thing that kind of stuck with me. And fortunately, what ended up happening was, nobody went to juvie. Everybody got fines except for those of us who told the truth, which disclosure, I did tell the truth that night. Confessed to everything that happened and, ratted out my friends. I'll admit it. They got fines and community service, so it actually ended up being, in the long run, better for them. But the good news is we were living in central Pennsylvania at the time because we had moved from Charlotte, and it was my first exposure to public school. I forgot to mention that. I'm in public school for the first time,
Right.
and I don't think public school automatically means you're going to crater, but it was hard. It was a hard transition because I'm going from the South to central Pennsylvania, Southern Baptist private school to central Pennsylvania. I definitely stick out. I was in my 5th grade play because it was a Western, because I was the only one that sounded like a cowboy, according to them.
Or close enough.
Close enough. I had a Southern accent, so I automatically got to be a cowboy. And of course, at the end of the play, all the moms are coming up to me, "Oh, you're so adorable," because I talk funny.
Right.
I don't sound like them. So, that was a really difficult, I would say middle school was probably one of the worst times of my entire life, because I kind of had this identity crisis, which ultimately led into that issue with the police, where I was trying to find this place of acceptance, which, having been married to me for 15 years, acceptance is always the struggle for me.
Yeah.
It's the one that you will always fight with. There's always one thing you fight with your entire life, and that's mine. So struggling in that acceptance led me to make really bad decisions, and ultimately leading to that arrest and kind of a few months of really terrifying, thinking you're going to go to jail. But in the end, it ends up being okay. Though, I was bullied and I got beat up. Kids would follow me home. I felt ultimately that I was never on safe ground. You go to school thinking that any minute it's going to be a fight. Like, you would go to school nervous because the people that you hung out with, you didn't know if they were suddenly going to turn on you, because that's just kind of the culture.
Right.
Everybody needs a pick, a person to pick on. Everybody needs a punching bag. And, 9 times out of 10, I'm the punching bag. So right in the middle, we get to high school, things are okay. I'm starting to learn that, my defense mechanism was to be really a smart aleck, right? And to be kind of wanting to be the center of attention. So I was kind of like a class clown. And what I learned was that people didn't like that either. So right around freshman year, I just decided to kind of try to withdraw as much as I could my sophomore year. And I remember, that tended to work, because in my sophomore yearbook, most of the quotes are, you're much more quiet and not as obnoxious this year. I like that. There wasn't a, hey, we're good friends. It was like, you're so much more quiet, and that's better. And so
that's hard.
It was hard. And you try to figure that kind of stuff out. And then what ends up happening is my dad transfers to Dallas.
And now you see where we start getting closer.
Yes.
In our stories.
This is where our stories start to converge. So I moved to Dallas my junior year of high school.
Yeah.
And I ended up going to this high school that I went from a high school of like 300 people to a high school of 2,500 people.
Yep.
Which was awesome, because I was capable to kind of blend into the background.
Right.
And it was good for me, because that was where my dad and my mom, we had been involved in a church in Pennsylvania, but the search for a good place for us to land, a good church for us to land, led us to one that ultimately became my safe haven. It became the place where I made most of my friendships, the lifelong friendships I have. And it's also the place that I was discipled very, very well. And in fact, my youth pastor at the time, Dave was the guy who really took a group of us guys under his wing, and why I'm I hate the word passionate because it's overused, but why I have this desire to watch students be discipled and grow was because of Dave.
Right.
And he took a small group of us, said, "Hey, you guys are going to be my Bible study, and you don't really have a choice," because he was he'd been a football player, really big guy and intimidating. So we were all terrified of him, even though we loved him to death, and we still do. He took us and built this Bible study, and I remember him. What stuck in my head was when Dave explained to us what it meant to be a disciple, is that it's not anything you're doing, but living in dependence on Christ, because you can't live that way. Because even though you possess everlasting life by just believing, and I know that the Bible says you believe you have everlasting life. You have this life to live, but you can't do that in isolation and apart from God. And so the Holy Spirit is who is empowering you for that. And I never got that. because I'd always been trying to just be a good kid out of the fear that maybe I wasn't saved, or I was trying to prove it, or I was, so I made but at the same time trying to be both, accepted by this group of people and also accepted at church. And so, Dave kind of helped me see that and embrace that. And he was the guy that made me want to be a youth pastor down the road.
Yep.
And I made some really good friends, lifelong friends, very core group of guys that we spent a lot of time together. We're still good friends, even though we don't see each other very often. But you get us in a room together, and it's like we go right back to being who we were. I went to college, the same college at first that you did. I went to UNT
just a few years
for
apart.
a few years apart. Well, you were in middle school when I started college.
I was. Yeah,
Yes.
we do have a little bit of an age difference.
We do joke about that. But I went to UNT for 2 years and did terribly.
Yep.
Cratered.
I'm not sure I knew you did terribly.
Oh, I did terribly. I had a 1.5 grade point average
Yep, you
first.
did terribly.
I did terribly because I didn't go to school. I was
Yeah.
commuting, and so I was driving from my parents' house. I just didn't go to school. So I almost failed out. Brought the grade up the next semester, and then was there for another year, and then became a camp counselor in Colorado during the summer, which I loved. It was another step towards being in ministry.
So I think something that's important about your story is where my story happens, a lot of it in college, as far as kind of your shock and awe or your big moments.
The growth moments, yeah.
A lot of your stories happened in high school.
Yeah, high school
Right.
was high school, middle school. I mean, middle school up to that point was the big one. I mean, middle
Right.
school was just so bad. It was probably the
Right.
most influential thing. To this day, I still, there's still things that are impacting from that. I go off to college, and it was funny because two of the girls that I worked with at camp got this bright idea that we were all going to move to Colorado and buy a house and live there and go to school.
Commune.
Yeah, so I come up with this genius idea that I'm going to move with two girls to Colorado.
Yeah, you are.
And much to the consternation of the parents involved, and I was older than them. Ultimately, what ended up happening was finally some sense was kicked into my head, and I had to be the one to say, hey, this is not a great idea. But I remember that's when my dad said, hey, you know what? If you want to get away
Yeah.
and go out on your own, you could just go to Lubbock and go to Texas Tech.
Right.
That's 5 hours away. It's far enough away. You can get in with your grades,
Yeah.
and you might like it. So went and checked it out and ended up going to Tech. Loved it. I love Lubbock, believe it or not. I love being out at Tech. I made, again, more friends that I'm even closer to than my high school ones.
Right.
And I love it. And it's so funny to watch that even later in life, some of us have circled around. And we can get into more detail in the next part of that because there's some stuff there that's.
Yeah.
But I was an RA, and I majored in English, and I graduated, and I loved that time, definitely. And I used to say, I was really awesome in college. College was where I was super awesome.
Amazing.
I was amazing in college, and then I don't know what happened, but you're right. I think the most impactful stuff happened in at least up to that point were middle school, and there's going to be things down the road that we're going to talk about.
Yeah.
But I think that's where that seed was laid, middle school, high school, of, okay, maybe ministry, maybe being this pastor, maybe being a youth pastor is this thing that God wants you to do, though it would take a long time to get there. And I think that's part of the story that's coming up in another episode.
Well, I think your story is unique in college because you had a lot of leadership type experiences in college
Yeah.
that a lot of people don't get until much later in life.
Well, yeah, I mean, I was an RA, and I did go off to grad school for educational administration, and I ran a dorm for, you're not supposed to say dorm, it's supposed to be residence hall, but I ran dorms for 3 years.
Yeah.
Had a lot of failures, truthfully, very few successes, but it taught me a lot. I wasn't a very good one.
I was a lifeguard manager, and I was awful.
Yeah, I was a terrible.
I mean, I look back and I think, God, I was such a terrible leader.
Yeah, I was a terrible hall director, terrible leader. But it taught me a lot today that hopefully I'm at least a decent leader.
Right.
So yeah, I did have a lot of leadership. I dealt with a lot of crisis situations with college students.
Yep.
And we can talk about that again. That I think prepared me for that.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen the worst of people. I've seen the worst of college students. I've seen the best in them. I've seen things that I would never wish. I've dealt with things I'd never wish on anybody to have to deal with.
Right.
But at the same time, what that does is it gives you a little bit of resolve. So, but I think that's where, eventually I would get into ministry, but I think I had to go this long road. And we'll talk about it, and I'll talk about it later. It wasn't always fun, and it was frustrating. But, if this is the first chapter of that and kind of the start, I want to save that for another time. So.
Yeah. So in talking about your childhood, what is one great memory that you have?
Okay, so I have a lot of great memories, but this one cracks me up, and I haven't thought about it in a long time until you said it. But it's a great example of being a dad and a father. So my dad made up this, I got this idea that we were going to take this guy's camping trip. And we were really, really, really going to do it right.
How old were you?
Oh, third or fourth grade. Zach was going to go with us. It was going to be just the three guys, and we were going to do it the right way. We were going to build a lean-to.
Yeah.
We weren't going to bring a tent.
Because moms hate that.
Yeah. We were going to bring a lean-to. We were going to sleep with the top open so we could see the stars.
I need a cabin.
Yeah, I know.
And pillows and
we were going to hobo stoves and all this stuff. It was really cool. And we get out there, and it's great until the sun starts to go down. And something across the lake, because we motored in on a boat and on this lake, something killed something across the lake. It made this horrible sound, like this scream. It was terrible. It was probably like a bobcat or something, but it really freaked me out. And I was already nervous in the woods. So we have dinner, and we do the whole thing with the foil meals and stuff, and we climb into the lean-to, and my brother immediately just goes to sleep because he could sleep anywhere. And I'm every noise. I'm just like, what is that? What is that? What is that? And I feel like I'm the only one awake.
Nervous,
scared. Everybody's asleep. I'm not in a great place camping. And at about 2 a.m, my dad goes, "Hey, Nathan." I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Are you awake?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "I miss your mom. Do you want to go home?"
That's so sweet.
And I don't know if he was doing it because he knew I was scared, and that was his excuse. And it might have been that was his excuse. But I just remember that. And so and now that I'm thinking about it, it's probably what it was.
He knew you were going to be
up all night. He knew I was
night.
freaking out. So he just made up this excuse to, "I miss your mom." So we packed up in the middle of the night in the dark, motored across the lake.
You're a sweet brother. He's such a trooper.
I know. Motored across the lake, got in the truck, drove whatever, the hour, 2 hours, whatever, got in. We got in at like 5 a.m.
I slept all day.
Yeah, pretty much. And so I remember that because it was just such a funny moment. But, it's one of those things I find out a lot of the stories with my dad. I look back and I go, "Oh, wait a minute. Now I get what he was doing."
Yeah.
Like I thought it was this, but really he was doing this. And we have a funny one in our relationship that we'll get to, the lunch.
Oh, yeah.
That's a funny story.
Yeah.
So, anyway. So that's the first part of my chapter, or first chapter of my book, and we really appreciate you guys if you're still listening, and that was interesting in any way, shape, or form. We appreciate it.
Yeah, we don't know if this is going to work or not.
We don't know, maybe, but
we thought if nothing else, our kids have our history.
Yeah, the kids have the history, and we'd love to hear from you. So if you've got any feedback or something you relate to, you can reach us at thepodcastinglees@gmail.com. That's just one word, thepodcastinglees. And we will continue to do this, and hopefully we will be getting these out with much more regularity.
Yeah.
And then we'll see where this branches from. But we'd love to hear from you. We love talking with people, and if there's anything that, again, you relate to, let us know. Until next time, this is Nathan.
And this is Kim.
And you have a great week.